Free speech has a home on today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
Yep. And if you want to call in, do try to be mindful of the guests that I have on and the themes that we'll be covering. So you can, we got James on. We'll be talking about Mexico and Latin America. So let's try to stay a bit on topic. And James has been coming on every once in a while. He's an American-born writer and investment consultant specializing in non-conventional markets and countries, founder of the Borderless blog and podcast. Borderlessblog.com, jamesguzman.com, borderlesshealthinsurance.com. If you need health insurance, what's happening, James?
Hrvoje, what's going on, man? It's been a while. How you been?
Been all right. Just, grinding away as most people are. What are you up to?
Oh, man. All good. Yeah, just, same thing here. Just working. Haven't been doing a whole lot of podcasts and stuff lately, especially since the baby came. But now I think I'm about to think about cranking it back up again. So other than that, yeah, all good here in San Miguel de Allende. The weather's great and all good.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see you fire up the podcast again. I bookmarked. You recently were with Monica Perez on her deep dives, and she's no stranger to TNT Radio, and I've been on her program as well. I'm going to check out your chat with her a bit later, and there's a lot of rumblings, ongoings when it comes to Mexico and Latin America, and maybe to start, I think the biggest thing is this talk of a U.S.-Mexico War 2.0, this U.S. invasion of Mexico. You've got Dan Crenshaw, Tom Cotton, Senator, MTJ, Marjorie Taylor Greene, out in Florida, Mexican-American Congresswoman, I forget her name, Paulina Luna. And that's kind of strange from her vantage point. She's talking about she's a Mexican-American talking about U.S. invading Mexico, like her country. How does that kind of puts you in a spot? But one of the bases for that was the Matamoros incident in Tamaulipas. These 4 U.S. citizens that two got killed, 2 kidnapped, and then later it turns out they had a history of drug trafficking in the U.S. And then we saw cartel, the cartel handed over those 5 cartel members that were involved in that, kind of saying, I'm sorry. And so what do you make of all of this? I mean, this is pretty crazy. We haven't seen something like this in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it is ramping up. There's a lot of people. I think we've talked a ton about it, that I've been predicting this kind of thing, that there will be these kind of events that are going to happen more and more closer to the border, or even north of the border, that will cause a lot of Americans to call for this kind of thing. And I mean, to be honest, I understand where people are coming from. I mean, especially in places in America, they're not used to that type of violence, they're not used to that type of thing happening, and so they hear these stories. A lot of Mexicans, they're just like, oh well, that's something that happens sometimes, but a lot of Americans, that's not how they look at it. So they're just like, we need to just put the quash on this. But the thing is it's a lot. It's more complicated than that. You listed a few people there. Most notably, I think Lindsey Graham and Dan Crenshaw are the ones. I always find them to be like the people in the especially Lindsey Graham. Well, Dan Crenshaw too, but that they just say some crazy stuff, and then the other side of the aisle gets to say, oh, the Republicans say this, that's what the Republicans say because Lindsey Graham said it, right? And that, for instance, that's what AMLO said when, this clip went viral about him saying that Mexico was safer than the United States. He was responding to Lindsey Graham, and he said, yeah, well, the conservative, he just says, like this blanket term, the conservatives in the United States are talking about invading Mexico, so they get to just like smear the entire conservative wing of the United States because of one person. And I wouldn't say that he said that we need to invade the United States. He was saying that they should be, they're going to pass legislation that would consider them to be terrorists. And I mean, they are terrorists. So again, I mean, I can understand it, but it's just, with this type of intervention, I would think that the United States should have, especially after the last, crazy thing in Afghanistan and now what's going on in Ukraine, could learn to, possibly this isn't going to just work. Oh, let's just go in and blow them all up. This is a country that you have a lot of trade with. There's also a long history in Mexico of the Mexican people that that basically they don't want to be a colony of the United States. There's a lot of things you can read into the Niños Héroes and Chapultepec Castle and understand like the depth of a lot of the resentment with Mexicans as far as like not wanting to be part of the United States, and maybe even historically of like Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, parts of California that used to be part of Mexico. So you're opening a whole can of worms, and so yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a good idea, but it's a complex problem, And then you have people like Peter Zion. A lot of people are listening to him now, and he was saying everybody just needs to stop using cocaine, And people are like, oh, that's genius, No, but it's not going to happen. Okay, it's not the drugs' fault; it's the drug war's fault, So yeah, I mean, the best thing we could do to take away the money from the cartels. I mean, yeah, they do need to have better institutions in Mexico. I think there's a lot of institutions that they don't serve the citizenry all over of Mexico, and that's basically what cartels do. They don't go and pick on people, middle class people from the United States, or they don't mess around in like rich people's neighborhoods here in Mexico. They just mess around when they threaten and extort a lot of poor people that have no other options, and they can't protect themselves. And so, yeah, I think, economic development, allowing people to defend themselves, and some institutional reforms in Mexico, and, possibly even just like, cracking down like they're doing in El Salvador. I think Bukele is doing a pretty good job.
Bring in Bukele, and, Peter Zeihan.
I'm fine with it.
That. Yeah, me too. Bring in, Peter Zeihan. I posted the clip where he was giving a lecture about Mexico. I think it was 1 or 2 years old,
yeah.
And he was basically saying if U.S. Invaded Mexico, it would become like Afghanistan. It's like, no, we don't. Yeah. We don't want that out. You retweeted something that made me laugh today, but it's also kind of sad. You retweeted Joseph Fort Cotto's comment, and it was an article where AMLO responds, and it says, AMLO listed reasons Americans might be turning to fentanyl, including single-parent families, parents who kick grown children out of their home, and people who put elderly relatives in old age homes and visit them once a year, end quote. Joseph comments, truth overload. And I mean, I have to tell you the truth, as an American, that is true. And living in different other parts of the world, there's a stark difference. Like when you go to Croatia, the places that I live, or where I'm citizen of, Mexico, Croatia, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, my former homes, the parents, when they get old, elderly, the grandparents, they live with one of their kids, pretty much. And in America, it's like, kick your parents out, put them in a care home. And, I've mentioned, just yesterday, I mentioned one of my neighbors in Illinois was this old Jewish dude called Hank. And he was very cool. He'd make us breakfast. He'd pay me to mow his lawn. And I thought he was middle class like us. He'd always be complaining about his kids. They would only come to ask for money. And then when he passed, we learned that he was a multimillionaire. He invented some patents that hospitals used like during World War II. And he was complaining about his kids just wanted to come get money. And so your further thoughts on this? I think AMLO's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, we have to think about this, it's kind of more nuanced a bit. So, we talk about the fentanyl crisis and you say, oh, it's just like China is making everybody take fentanyl. I mean, I don't think that's what's going on. Using it, putting it in other drugs that people don't, they don't want to use fentanyl, but they're cutting it or whatever. Then that's, again, that's another problem of the drug war, because they're selling these black market drugs because some people are addicted to things that they have to buy black market that are then cut up. And so, that's another story. But, just people, they've looked into, I guess we have to go back to the beginning and understand like addiction itself. People try to blame the drugs, and I'm really on the side of that. Addiction is trying to fill something within you, and so people get addicted to gambling, people get addicted to sex, all kinds of vices, and drugs can be one of it, because it just gives you a high in your I forgot the name of the chemical in your body, but anyways, and then you kind of get in the cycle where you need to get more and more of it to feel better. And I think that in a lot of, especially what they would call flyover country in the United States, I mean, they've been hollowed out, and especially when you do see a lot of homeless encampments, people living on the street, they're middle-aged young men mostly, and they just don't have a sense of purpose. I think there's no idea of, no like chance of them having a career. Their family is not supportive, like he was saying, maybe they don't have a connection with their grandparents or something like that might help as well. And in a lot of ways, it's just separated everybody, emotionally from each other, and that also, I think, causes people to do addictive behavior. So, again, treating something like this on a government level is tough. This is kind of, this is a cultural or societal type of thing, and that's one good thing about being in Mexico, is that and I'll be honest, I don't know if a lot of people know this where I live. I don't know about Guadalajara where you are, but where I live in San Miguel, there's like no homeless people. There's maybe 5 homeless people in my whole city. Seriously. And because it's just very inexpensive for people to live. You can buy fruits and vegetables very inexpensively. Normally they have a property owned with their families. And, other than that, you can walk everywhere and stuff like that. And they have emotional connection. So, even though they're not rich, they're not just, I think a lot of times in the United States, you just think that, well, I can't pay to drive anywhere. I can't afford gas. I can't afford food. I can't eat anywhere. I can't afford to date any women because they all want me to take them to very expensive restaurants. And so what's the point? I'm not going to, I don't have any connection. And so they turn to drugs or alcohol and something like that. So I think that was an interesting point. AMLO is kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes he says things that make sense, but then he'll at the end of the paragraph he'll say something that doesn't make sense. So it's kind of it's hard to trust what he says, but sometimes something good comes out.
And another depressing story, we've talked about this before, and it just confirms what my recent podcast guest said. I interviewed Emmanuel Rincon on Geopolitics and Empire. He's originally from Venezuela, and he's in Florida. He's got a big following, and he's a conservative. And he told me in the interview, he said, in general, in Latin America, people are just, they've got this collectivist mentality, like this slave-like mentality. And he's like, unless we snap out of it, we're just going to continue getting screwed. And then I remembered that, and then I see this headline. So supposedly, the survey finds supposedly, if you know how surveys are, they can be fidgeted with, but most Mexicans do not want to relax gun control. And I'm like, are you serious? I'm here hoping that gun control will be relaxed so I can get some guns legally. And it says, as part of a wide-ranging government study, almost 70% of those surveyed did not believe that easier access to guns would make their communities safer, with 67% stating that keeping a firearm in the home would make them feel less safe. Are you serious? Like, it would, from I think the correct perspective, it would make you safer. Obviously, if you were to own one, you would be forced, as being someone responsible, to take the training, clean and take care of your gun, know how to use it, treat it with respect, put it somewhere and safe where kids or no one could reach it, and then have it when you need it to protect yourself from the crooks running amok. And so, yeah, this was just depressing. What was your reaction to this?
Yeah, and I thought it was a funny part of it was that normally, so this is one of the tricks. One thing about gun control in general is that I think just a lot of people are unaware of the facts because the media twists distorts the statistics and all that so much. For instance, one thing that a lot of people bring up is that areas with they say, well, areas with a lot of firearm ownership have more violence, right? And that they're trying to say it's because of the gun ownership, but most of the time it's the other way around. So when a place becomes violent, people want to go and get guns to protect themselves. That's just a natural reaction. And so, so I thought it was kind of interesting with that survey that, there's obviously there's a lot of areas, and they said that even some of the poorest areas in Mexico, people were saying, no, they don't want the ability to own a firearm, when that's just seems like it's against the instinct of self-preservation. I mean, because if you're in a crime-ridden area where people have guns and are robbing you, I mean, isn't it obvious? Yeah. I mean, like, I need a gun. I mean, what, or you just want to sit there and be a sitting duck? I don't know, but yeah,
I like what one of the opposition parties said. He said, quote, "People are defenseless. Criminals arrive at homes and businesses and they murder women and men, Mexicans who can't defend themselves because there is not a proper control and registry so that they can have access to powerful weapons." And that's coming from PRI leader, and his last name is funny, Alejandro Morena, because Morena is the name of AMLO's party. That's but funny. I mean, he makes the perfect point, and it's an equalizer. If you're in your house or a small business and you got a gun, and these guys come in, all of a sudden it's a whole different ball game. And if you're legally allowed to defend yourself and kill this criminal, that and before the law, I've said this before, I have zero problem on my conscience of someone breaking into my home, of me killing them cold dead. My home has been broken into 3 times in Mexico, not where I currently live, but previously. And so I was almost like, since it happened 3 times, I was going to sit on my couch all night with the lights off with a gun and wait for them to break in the 4th time. And as they turn on the lights, be like, surprise, And so, I mean, what are you going to do? Am I going to allow them to break into my house a 4th time, a 5th time? It's a total violation of your, privacy and mental, psychological space, too. Yeah. And so,
for sure. But, what I think is weird is, I think that I don't know any official studies about this, and I don't know how you would go about doing it. But I mean, I don't know how low gun ownership actually is in Mexico, but just most people own them illegally.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously, I mean, the a lot of people don't know, but just as there's a gun culture in southern United States, I mean, I don't know how much it still exists, but at least there was a gun culture in Mexico. I mean, all the Zapatistas and all these guys running around and the ranchers and all that. They're people, especially when you go out to the pueblos and stuff, they're not afraid of guns, but they just hand it over to each other, and it's no big deal. There's just not a lot of state intervention, and they don't really care. So that's why I don't know how that survey was worded, but it seems kind of weird. And I don't know how much to believe about it, because also, I mean, when I talk to a lot of Mexicans, I think that, it's just kind of like when you talk to your standard normie Democrat, they're just like afraid of the idea, of people. They're just, the guns are just going to jump up and start shooting people. You know what I mean? Like that's what they actually think. Like the guns shoot people. You know what I mean?
We've talked about this before, James, but some articles caught my eye, some specific to Mexico. Just in the news earlier, I was mentioning how World Economic Forum published yesterday saying cash is still going to be here for a while. And then it was published recently that the Bank of Mexico, they're launching a new project to try to eliminate cash and get Mexicans to stop using cash. And they tried previously, I think in 2019, the Bank of Mexico launched, together with all of the other banks in Mexico, launched something called CODI. So like when you log into your app on your smartphone, you have the option to activate this CODI thing, where you can just pay like with your phone, contactless at places in Mexico. And I never activated it because I'm just a cash person. I'm a full-on anti-Great Resetter, and I'm not activating that cursed thing. And the article talks about how there's been a low adoption among the Mexican population for this CODI, and now they're launching something called DEMO, which it says it's the new bet of the Bank of Mexico to reduce the use of cash in the country after CODI had low adoption. So, CODI was using QR codes, and so it is true. It does seem to be the case that they're going to have their work cut out for them, the globalists, to get people to stop using cash. It depends on the country, but what's your take on Bank of Mexico now? They tried CODI, doesn't work. Now they're trying DEMO, so they keep trying. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about about that in Mexico, to be honest with you. I think we talked about that thing. Remember the thing that I shared a while ago, where it was like 95% of people use cash still in Mexico, like as their for their daily stuff. And I think that's going to continue to be the case. And I mean, I know that people, that there are a lot of people that want to push this, the cashless society and all that kind of stuff. They've been trying to do it for a while. I mean, a lot of people don't realize, but in the United States, they used to have $1,000 bills, right? And pretty sure they had $10,000 bills as well. And before all the inflation, the houses. I think my parents' first house cost like $30,000 or something like that. So, you could just have three $10,000 bills, and you just go and you pay for a house, and a lot of things like that. So that that's how people used to conduct business, and they've just slowly but surely, successfully cut down on the use of cash, and people go along with it because of convenience and stuff like that. So I guess we'll see. I mean, I think that it's just, when technology goes forward, that people, or just kind of adopted, like I said, for for convenience reasons. But it doesn't seem to be a general, big trend. Huge trend in Mexico. So I don't know. Just me. I just don't think it's not as big as, say, in some of the other countries where it's just all use of credit card and debit cards and stuff like that.
Well, that's good. We always need some optimism from our guests, and maybe to get your thoughts on the Silicon Valley Bank thing. It seems to be, that collapse. I think there was another bank, and the Fed is talking about
Signature Bank
injecting $2 trillion. It's like bailouts all over again. I did read.
Yep.
I think it does seem to be the case that at least in Mexico, the system is a bit more stable. I think the government, there's more more regulations for the Mexican banking system, so it's not as easy to collapse, say, in the U.S. But what do you make of the Silicon Valley thing? Is this it? Is it 2008 all over again?
Yeah. So I think that this is we have now had rising interest rates for the first time in over a decade. We've been living in this malaise, which has created a kind of a Frankenstein economy in the United States, of ultra low interest rates, artificial. And this has caused all kinds of bubbles and all across the economy, mostly in the tech sector, which Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank were heavily invested in. They were basically Silicon Valley was specifically venture capitalist fund for the tech sector, and they're getting a bailout. I mean, I don't care what people say, that they're getting a bailout. So, and they have stepped in and said that they are going to make whole all of the investors, even over $250,000. And so that's a bailout, and they can put things like, they can fire some people here and there, and they've set the precedent that they're going to do this. They're going to do this for Signature Bank, and they're going to do this for banks moving forward. It also has to do with the collateral that banks have on their balance sheets, as far as lots of debt, right, that they've loaned out to people at these ultra low interest rates. And so now, if interest rates are a lot higher, then when people deposit their money, then they're going to want a higher return, and they're not able to give it if they have these loans that are paying pretty much nothing. So, I think this is just it's on the same trajectory. The federal government's going to bail out these banks. They're probably going to nationalize a lot of these mortgages, because the banks just, they were taking advantage of the ultra low interest rates, which was the fault of the Federal Reserve. But that's the thing. It's just everybody was, and so I think it's a big problem. I think that a lot more shoes are gonna drop, and I think that this ultra low interest rates, along with this progressive ideology, as a lot of people are making fun of these banks because they were super, on the woke train, and they were all with climate change and diversity hires and all this type of stuff, and that was kind of the idea of, like, if you're down with all the progressive ideology, you need to work with this bank. And so, honestly, I think we're at this point where the interest rate thing is over, because they're probably going to lower interest rates again, but then that's just going to bring about inflation. So this whole United States hegemony through the dollar, I mean, I think it's coming to an end. I think it's a long time coming, but it's slow but sure that it's not going to last forever. And I think that, along with just all the whole progressive ideology of putting all these unqualified people into positions of power, is it's a disaster waiting to happen. And funny enough, I know that, just like you and I, a lot of people, especially after Trump, we were kind of just like black-pilled, like, oh, well, you know what I mean? I guess they're just going to take over because there's not any sane people that are going to take over, and they're just going to run roughshod over us. But honestly, from how I'm looking at it now, it seems like the Biden administration is just going to screw themselves and screw this whole thing over, and it's all just going to come down. Honestly, I mean, it's incompetent. The military is incompetent. The whole financial sector is incompetent. It's all based on this woke crap, and so yeah, as the interest rates go up, then you're seeing cracks in the foundation, and I think it's all going to come apart. And I think that the United States losing in Ukraine is going to be another big one. They're just not going to be able to deny it. That they're just, that's the only reason everybody takes so much shit from the United States, is because they're they carry a big stick. But if their stick isn't perceived as being so big anymore, then there's just, they have a small stick and they just talk crap to everybody. So, I think that it looks like a lot of other countries are kind of just like had enough, and they're, just taking advantage of the situation. And once the cracks become very apparent, they're just going to dogpile on the United States. So, yeah, I think that's what's going on.
Well, at least I'm going to have my smart OXXO. OXXO's, that's like the Mexican 7-Eleven or convenience store that's on every corner in Mexico, and they're expanding the presence in the U.S. I didn't even know they were in the U.S., but you may have seen me post this, that they've unveiled the very first smart OXXO, no people, no cash, just QR codes and phones at the campus of my former employer, the Tec de Monterrey in Nuevo León. And Tech is owned by FEMSA, which is a WEF partner. And they're talking about replicating these humanless convenience stores all over the rest of Mexico. So anyways, that's interesting. 40 seconds left real quick. Where do we find James Guzman?
Yeah, jamesguzman.com is a good place to go. If you thinking about moving to Mexico, then I do consultation calls, or if you need international health insurance, I can help you with that. So, yeah, always great to be on TNT and talking with you, Hrvoje.
All right. Enjoy the mezcal, the tequila, whatever it is you're enjoying, coffee, tea, and I'll be right back after this break.